Chapter 221, The Three Mentors Get Fired. At this moment, Deputy Operator Ma's face also changed. He whispered, "Chief Operator, so, no more of your nonsense." The Chief Operator shot him a dark glance and said, "The superiors already expressed their strong dissatisfaction and almost started cursing. They asked me who introduced the three unqualified instructors. Do you understand the meaning of their words?" "What?" Deputy Operator Ma's body quivered and his face turned pale. He was completely stunned. Other people were astounded at the same time, for they had not expected the problem to be that big. It was the superior's words that indicated who was at fault in this matter. The three unqualified made it clear that the three mentors' actions had surpassed the limit of their tolerance. It would have been fine if it had not caused a tempest, but now, they have to give an explanation to the people who are paying attention to the development of this matter. Besides, they asked who introduced the three mentors, which meant that even their superiors would be held accountable. There was no doubt that the consequences of such a straightforward interrogation ranged from punishment to unemployment. Deputy Operator Ma was well aware of this, otherwise, his face would not become so pale. "Chief Operator, Deputy Operator Ma stood up and asked in a hurry with some confusion. If something really went wrong and they had to face Saft, even his patron could not help him. At this point, he was truly afraid. Fortunately, the Chief Operator told him the good news. The Chief Operator snorted with his eyebrows furrowed and said, "I told the superiors that the three of them applied for the job on their own." Whoops. Hearing what he said, Deputy Operator Ma was shocked, after which, he took a deep breath and let out a long sigh, only hearing the strong beat of his heart, with his head was covered in sweat. However, he finally relaxed a little. He looked at the Chief Director gratefully and said, thank you, Chief Operator. All right. Don't talk nonsense." The Chief Operator shook his hands and said, "You should know what to do. There's no room for compromise on this matter." "Yep, I know what to do." Deputy Operator Ma nodded repeatedly. At this point, he was not dissatisfied with the Chief Operator at all in his mind. "As for the rest of you?" The Chief Operator glanced around at the others and said, "Everyone is responsible for this matter, so each of you has to handle it properly. If it cannot be handled properly, then all bonuses will be cancelled this month." As soon as this remark was made, everybody's face changed. They were somewhat helpless and angry. They were completely implicated by accident. Everyone should get to work now. The Chief Operator directly picked up the document and turned to leave. As for Deputy Operator Ma, he quickly followed. About half an hour later, the program which invited the three men as mentors had come to an end. Just as the host concluded the program, a figure came in hastily. "Stop." This figure let out a cry. Everyone turned to look and were surprised to find that the man turned out to be Deputy Operator Ma. At this time, he was scowling and had a frightening expression. "Stop. Didn't you hear what I said? Stop recording." Deputy Operator Ma reprimanded them, then looked at the obese man and the other two mentors while saying, "You three, come here." Whoosh. The hearts of the three men skipped a beat as worry filled their faces. They got up and obediently followed Deputy Operator Ma all the way to his office without saying anything. "What was wrong with your last show?" Deputy Operator Ma said with his eyebrows raised. "Which program?" the obese man asked cautiously. The three of them had pulled a few strings and requested for Deputy Operator Ma to allow them to work here. Therefore, seeing Deputy Operator Ma's semblance of anger, they were careful and did not dare to speak casually. "Are you playing stupid?" Deputy Operator Ma glared at them and did not want to say more. His tone became chilly as he stiffly said, "All right, I'm not interested in the reason either. I just came to inform you that the three of you should go to the finance department right now and get your salary, then fuck off as far as you can." "What?" The three men were shocked and the expressions on their faces changed greatly. "Elder Brother Ma, what's going on? Why?" The obese man quickly asked, "Is it because of public opinion online recently?" Elder brother Ma, that's slander. We recorded the program normally. It's Han Yang who wrongfully discredited us and guided public opinion. We're preparing to prosecute him. Elder brother Ma, if this is the reason, you have to help us. Bring a lawsuit against him. Deputy Operator Ma laughed with rage, then gritted his teeth and said, "Don't you have any freaking idea what you've done? Don't you know your own ability? Do you think you can compare with Han Yang? He produced 50 masterpieces in just a few days. What do you have to show? Don't you realize that this matter has already been heard by my superiors? You almost got me involved. What the hell? Get out immediately and don't appear before my eyes again." The three of them became deathly pale. They had not expected the matter to turn into such a major controversy. "Do you want me to repeat myself?" After seeing the expressions of the three men, Deputy Operator Ma coldly said, "I don't think you are suitable for this industry, so be careful in the future." The three men looked at each other and waddled out. They didn't even go to the finance department and just left the TV station directly. No one said a word all the way to the home of the man with glasses. What should we do?" The obese man sighed deeply. "What should we do? There's nothing we can do." The man with glasses grabbed his thick glasses and brutally threw them on the bed. Then he said in a heavy voice, "We can't just let it go. We ended up in a lot of trouble, so that Mr. Lee definitely has some responsibility towards us. That's right, we wouldn't be in this bind if not for him. He must compensate us for our losses." The eyes of the man with cropped hair lit up. "I'll call him." The obese man took out his cell phone and dialed Li Cheng's telephone number directly. "Mr. Lee, the three of us have just been fired from the TV station, and this is all because of you. What do you plan to do about this? If you don't give us an explanation, we will have to make this matter public." And then, the phone call lasted for more than half an hour, but Li Cheng finally agreed to pay 1.5 million yuan per person in hush money to support them during this period of time until everything quieted down. He paid a total of 7.5 million yuan, including the 4.5 million yuan this time and 3 million yuan last time, which caused Li Cheng's heart to hurt. He felt like it was okay to spend 2 or 3 million yuan to mess around, but he was in agony once he ended up spending 7 or 8 million yuan. That damn troublesome Han Yang. Li Cheng cursed in rage and instantly felt awful. He took out his mobile phone to dial the number for Shangjing. "Hey, how's it going over there? Xian will be on the show as scheduled this afternoon. Do as planned and I'll give you the reward when it's done," Li Cheng said with some pain. "Okay, wait for me." After he finished speaking, the man hung up the phone. At this moment, Li Cheng really felt the pinch. He promised to pay the two men 1 million yuan per person, so he had spent 9.5 million yuan in total. However, his total deposit was less than 20 million yuan. In truth, anyone would feel the pinch if their deposit was reduced to half. However, he believes that as long as he can get his hands on Xian and cultivate her accordingly, the benefits she would bring to him would definitely exceed 10 million yuan. But he took it all for granted. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the recording studio inside the Shangjing TV station, Happy Show began. Xian and the other 3 stars were on the stage playing games and answering some questions with a total of 5 hosts. After Xian's simple talent show, one of the hosts, An Qiang, began his offensive. "Xian, you're a big shot now. I heard that you questioned the evaluations of the mentors in another program. Can you tell us what you were thinking at that time?" The instant this remark was made, the atmosphere became frosty. Xian showed little emotion and did not answer. At this point, the host responsible for field control quickly stepped in and said, "Xuanhuan," meant that many people were curious to hear Xian's thoughts. "Of course, everyone supports Xian. If it is convenient, please satisfy everyone's curiosity. If not, we can skip this question." After he finishing speaking, he gave An Qiang a strange look. In fact, This kind of problem was likely to lead to silence, I can tell you. At this moment, Xian shook her head gently and bluntly replied, "There's a saying that everyone should have heard, that is, casting pearls before swine." Casting pearls before swine? Another brush-cut man said with sharp words, "Xian, you didn't say anything on the spot, but now you say you were casting pearls before swine at that time. Are you making a personal attack against those mentors, or has Han Yang, who is popular recently, given you confidence?" Poof! The host in charge of field control almost choked on his own saliva. He quickly said, "This idiom has many different meanings, so it isn't necessarily derogative. After talking for such a long time, everyone should be thirsty. Please have a drink, staff, and we can rest for a few minutes before continuing on to the next step." After finishing his words, he hurried aside with Anqiang and the brush-cut man. He asked them a few questions, but they did not answer. However, just when they finished talking, the two men's cell phones rang. They took them out and their faces changed after reading the messages. They looked at each other and saw shock in each other's eyes. The three mentors at Xuanhuan TV station had been fired. Hiss. This was indeed a minefield. Fuck, Li Cheng, do you want to cheat us? While they were getting a fright, the program continued to record. This time, without waiting for the host to speak, the brush-cut man hastily said to Xian, "Xian, I was a little tired just now, so I didn't speak clearly. I meant that you were obviously casting pearls before swine at that moment. Some people pretend to understand what they don't know, but you don't need to be angry with those kinds of people. Ha, ha. In fact, I want to know if you have a good relationship with Han Yang." "That's right, that's it. Yep, I'm curious about this too," echoed Anqiang. "Although the songs sung by Xian aren't of top quality, your voice and singing skills are totally excellent. In my eyes, your voice is top-notch and sounds natural, which is charming. I have all your albums at home." Chapter 222, Big Dark Devil Shadow. Upon hearing what the two men just said, the host responsible for field control, as well as the others, all froze. They had spoken maliciously just a few moments ago, so why was there no power behind their words now? There was even a hint of flattery. However, such an atmosphere was not bad. Happy Show wanted to encourage happiness, so it was a program that made people feel relaxed and light-hearted. Even Xian gave the two men a strange look before she started speaking again. She looked at the camera with her beautiful eyes and nodded slightly, then said, "What I was thinking was similar to what you two hosts said. I questioned their intent. Even though my songs aren't of top quality and my albums didn't sell well, I don't believe that my singing is bad. You're absolutely right." Anqiang clapped his hand and said, "As is known to all, Xian's voice has a heavenly quality that sounds like a something from a fairyland." Anqiang carried out a new kind of offensive, which astonished the other hosts. Why did the attitude of these two people differ so much from before and after the break? Was the bottle of water really that refreshing? After flattering her a bit, they recorded the program as usual, but Anqiang and the brush-cut man continued focusing on Xian. To give Xian more screen time, they asked her some easy and interesting questions. There was no denying that the shooting proceeded without a hitch. It only took an afternoon for everyone in the entertainment circle to find out about this matter. Tens of millions of netizens had scolded the three mentors at Xuanhuan TV station. As a result, the programs involved with those three people, including programs that were ready to be broadcast in the near future, programs that had been recorded and programs that had not yet been recorded, were all banned. Although SAPFT had not made an announcement, it was obvious that the three people had been fired from the network. It seemed absurd to them, but it happened right before their eyes. At this time, in Hong Kong Royal Entertainment Company, Makey was busy holding a meeting. In the conference room, there were about 13 or 14 people, all of whom were department heads. You all know the incident at Xuanhuan TV station, so express your opinions first, Makey said with a sigh. She could feel a headache coming on. Needless to say, after this incident, our relationship with Xuanhuan TV station won't be the same as before. After all, it was an entertainer from our company who caused the dismissal of the 3 mentors at their TV station. Besides, I heard that the chief operator was criticized by his superiors. One of them, a middle-aged man in his 40s, slowly said, "Anyway, as an entertainer from our company, Zhan should shoulder the responsibility of the break in relationship with the TV station, but she has really made a successful turnaround this time and is expected to come back. After several rounds of packaging and hype, I'm sure that she'll become popular again, and the profit she brings for the company will be more than enough to make up for the broken relationship." The middle-aged man's evaluation was very pertinent. In fact, he regarded Zhan's future prospects favorably, but he was in charge of publicity rather than resources. He felt it was strange that the company was not giving Zhan resources, and thought Maki was being petty-minded and persecuting Zhan for leaving a few years ago. But now, after the incident with the Xuanhuan TV station, he felt that Zhan was only one step away from making a comeback and that it would be a shame if the company missed the opportunity to promote her. "What you've said is reasonable." Meng Kai sighed inwardly. Li Cheng was very angry because of this matter. Even she had not expected Zhan to be so lucky and gain the support of Han Yang. This completely messed up their plan. Several of Li Cheng's friends had made phone calls to ridicule him, and some of them almost swore. "Everyone else, feel free to express your feelings," Maki said while glancing around at them. "I also think we should seize this opportunity to promote her. Zhan's success can bring a lot of benefits. It goes without saying that her ability to make money in the past was second to none." "That's right, I think so. I don't think this matter can be ignored." Finally, an opposing opinion was heard. Maki's eyes brightened. As she looked over, she saw a woman who supported Li Cheng, so she used an encouraging tone and said, "Tell me your thoughts." "Okay." After hearing what she said, the ponytail girl nodded and said, "Although this incident ended with Zhan's victory, you shouldn't forget what Zf said on the program. It isn't good to insult and abuse mentors. They represent our company, so it's inexcusable for them to not even display common courtesy." As soon as this remark was made, several people were already prepared to refute it. However, before they could say anything, Maki said, "Yes, that's what I think as well. I think we should put her return on hold for a while and see if public opinion changes. I didn't expect Han Yang to have so much influence." The ponytail girl shook her head with emotion. She also imagined what it would be like if she could make a splash one day. What a magnificent sight it would be. "That's right," a middle-aged man said repeatedly. "Only because of a single post from Han Yang, those 3 unfortunate people were fired. With only this slight appearance till now, Han Yang was able to guide public opinion. His influence is terrifying. He is probably the first person in the entertainment circle to become popular so quickly. It's incredible to already have the support of 50 or so stars. It's mainly because Han Yang is so talented, and that whoever gets along well with him will have a chance to receive some excellent songs." Several people repeatedly sighed with emotion. Of course, this wasn't just happening in the Royal Entertainment Company. Many other entertainment companies paid attention to this matter and had discussed it. Their conclusions were roughly the same. Han Yang's position had surpassed that of many A-list stars, and his ability to guide public opinion was so terrifying that it would be better for them to get along with him. At the very least, they could not afford to casually offend him. In any case, Han Yang had come into people's view. As for Zhang Han, he did not pay any more attention to the follow-up on this matter. It was about 2 p.m. and lunch was over. Because Suyu had something to do, she left with Wang Yihan after lunch. After he finished cleaning up, Zhao Feng walked over beside Zhang Han and whispered, "Master, I've already asked people to find office buildings for rent, so I'll be selecting from them in a few days. The 50 employees are all ready. Moreover, I've set up a training ground at the beach." Zhang Han nodded his head. looked at Meng Meng on the sofa, then chuckled and said, "Meng Meng, would you like to go to Mount New Moon? Go to the paradise?" "Well." Meng Meng hesitated while pouting. She glanced around at the television with her big shining eyes. She wanted to watch cartoons, but she also wanted to play with Dai. Zhao Feng began trying to persuade her in a hurry because he knew if Meng Meng refused to go there, Master certainly would not go. Therefore, he advised her in a low voice, "Meng Meng, Dai and Little Hai miss you. Well, okay, let's go and play with them." Meng Meng stood up on the sofa and stretched out her small arms for a hug. "Let's go." Zhang Han touched Meng Meng's head with a smile, held the little princess in his arms, then turned off the TV and went out with Zhao Feng. Over 10 minutes later, the three arrived at Mount New Moon. Upon stepping on the lawn, Meng Meng's short legs began to move. She shouted while running forward, "Little Hai, Dai, I'm here. Ooh, 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 ow." Soon after, the two cheerful voices sounded from the back mountain. Two high powers came running. Little Hai was always much faster, so he had already arrived in front of Meng Meng while Dai was still under the Thunder Yang tree. He stuck out his big tongue and wagged his tail while circling around Meng Meng. "Ow, ow." Little Hai called out softly twice. "Let's go for a ride." Meng Meng held out her hands towards Little Hai. Seeing her movement, Little Hai lowered himself and remained still until Meng Meng had finished sitting on his back. After they approached Dai, Meng Meng got down. Then, Meng Meng sat on Dai's shoulder and they walked to the pet area at the back of the mountain. Zhang Han and Zhao Feng stopped under the Thunder Yang tree. "Master, when should we go there?" asked Zhao Feng. "I'll teach you the simplified cultivation method of the Big Dark Devil Shadow first," Zhang Han said slowly while glancing in the direction of the back mountain. "Okay," Zhao Feng said excitedly. He was finally going to learn some powerful skills. The simplified version isn't very complicated. It only contains 32 movements. You should practice from the first movement. When you don't have any issues with the first movement, you can proceed to the next. Zhang Han explained simply. "Just 32 movements, so it won't take me long to finish learning." Zhao Feng said confidently, "It's good enough if you manage to make it up to 20 movements in half a year. Take a look first. This is the first movement." Zhang Han smiled faintly. After he finished speaking, Zhang Han began to demonstrate the exercise. His left arm moved straight behind him while his right arm was pointed towards the front. Simultaneously, he lowered his head, extended his right leg out horizontally to the right, then bent his left leg and assumed a crouching posture. To Zhao Feng's surprise, he formed a 90-degree angle with his left foot and stood on his tiptoe. Zhao Feng's eyes widened. Wasn't this pose too difficult for a human being? He had a painful expression on his face. This was only the first movement, so he could imagine that the next one would be even more unbelievable. "Do you have it memorized?" Zhang Han stopped and asked. "Yes." "Do it." "Okay." Zhao Feng took a deep breath and stretched out his hand and legs as Zhang Han had shown. Although his movement was very standard, he could not tiptoe. At the same time, he noticed that his muscles had already begun to tremble. After trying for half a minute, Zhao Feng gritted his teeth and finally finished the first movement. When he tiptoed, he felt soreness along with a feeling of numbness spreading. The next moment, his leg cramped and he collapsed to the ground. "Ouch, it hurts." Zhao Feng stood up to relax his muscles. "It's okay, you held on for 5 seconds. After glancing at the phone, Zhang Han said flatly, 5 seconds. Zhao Feng said with some dejection, "How long do I need to hold it to be qualified, Master?" "You'll barely be qualified if you can hold on for more than an hour for each movement." Poof! Zhao Feng almost gushed out a mouthful of blood. His mouth trembled for a while before he finally said, "Master, I will make it." Chapter 223, Preparing for Training. I'll teach you all the movements first, then you can practice them step by step. Zhang Han nodded his head and displayed the remaining 31 movements. As Zhang Han displayed them, Zhao Feng's face gradually changed, supporting the whole body with one finger and making different movements with his legs at the same time was too difficult. Moreover, there were more strange and unprecedented movements, which baffled and excited Zhao Feng. Have you memorized every movement? Zhang Han asked. Yes, Master, Zhao Feng said, then thought about it for a while. Then, with some curiosity, he asked, Master, how powerful will I be once I learn all these moves? If you master all of them and do some exercises, you can almost enter the chi refining stage. After thinking for a while, Zhang Han answered, will I really be that strong? Ha, 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 I'll train hard. Zhao Feng moved around merrily for a while, and then he said excitedly, Master, you said this is the simplified version, so does Master have the full version of the big dark devil shadow? Do you want to see it? Zhang Han said flatly, yes. Zhao Feng nodded repeatedly. Okay. Zhang Han reached out his right hand to point to the upper side of the Thunder Yang tree, then said, look at that trunk. What's wrong with the trunk? Wasn't the trunk over 10 meters high? Zhao Feng looked over with doubt. However, what he saw gradually widened his eyes, and his pupils contracted sharply with horror. Under his gaze, a figure stepped on the Thunder Yang tree and walked up horizontally. Zhang Han moved so fast that Zhao Feng's eyes could not keep up with him, leaving a series of afterimages in the air. Only 0.1 seconds later, the shadows gradually disappeared, after which, he saw Zhang Han standing on the branch that was more than 10 meters in the air. Poof! Zhao Feng almost spat out blood as he blushed and opened his mouth wide. He was dumbfounded. Zhao Feng trembled and could not say anything. A moment later, another series of afterimages drifted back down and Zhang Han returned to his original place as if he had never left. Were you able to see it clearly? Zhang Han said with a chuckle. No. Zhao Feng responded with a bemused expression, then he cheered up. He stared at Zhao Feng and said with surprise, Master, will I be able to move so quickly once I finish cultivating the big dark devil shadow? If you master the big dark devil shadow, you will be able to move 1.3 times faster than what I just showed you. Zhang Han shook his head slightly. Every cultivator had a set of special skills that suited them. Of course, he could also use other skills, but the effect of those skills would not be as good. Skills were really complex and relied on the physique of the cultivator. For instance, if Zhao Feng chose a first-class skill and a second-class skill, but the second-class skill was suitable for his physique, the second-class skill would be more powerful than the first-class skill for him. When Zhao Feng heard what Zhang Han said, he finally realized the power of the big dark devil shadow, so he said with great excitement, Master, I will work hard and cultivate. So, what will you teach them? Will they also learn the simplified version of the big dark devil shadow? Zhao Feng asked. They are not strong enough to practice the big dark devil shadow. When you want to head over there, Master, I can't wait to start practicing, Zhao Feng said while bracing himself. Let's go now. After Zhang Han said that, he took out 5 barrels that could hold 100 gin each and filled them with yanking water, then walked to the pet area and said, Meng, Papa is going to the beach up ahead. Are you going to stay here and play with them here or go with Papa? You? Meng stopped playing and looked over with her big clear eyes full of light as she thought about it. A moment later, the little princess spoke in a childish tone and said, How far is that? It's about a 10-minute walk, Zhao Feng answered. Oh, that's quite long. Meng pouted. Does Meng want to play with Dai and the other pets here? Zhang Han asked again. The temperature on Mount New Moon was maintained at about 23 degrees, which made people feel comfortable, but it was not the same outside. The temperature would rise to over 30 degrees, and the heat of the sun caused people to feel very hot. Zhang Han, therefore, thought it was good for Meng to stay on Mount New Moon to accompany Dai and Little Hai. That would allow him to feel relieved. But the little fellow was very clingy. She reached her small arms out and said, "Papa, hug. Meng Meng wants to go with Papa. Big Hi Hi and Little Hi Hi should go though with us." "Well, put on your hat, Meng Meng." Zhang Han took out Meng Meng's pink cartoon cap from a small bag on the side. Meng Meng sensibly waited for Zhang Han to put the hat on her and waved her small palms in Zhang Han's arms with happiness. "Dai, help Zhao Feng carry those barrels of yanking water." Before leaving, Zhang Han said to Dai. With that, Zhao Feng carried 2 buckets while Dai held 2 buckets under his arms and 1 in his right hand. 300 jin was very easy for him to carry. "Boss, shall we go straight through the back hill? It'll take us 4 or 5 minutes to get there." After thinking for a moment, Zhao Feng said. He knew there was a cliff a few meters high on the back mountain, but since they were not ordinary people, they could jump down easily. "Okay." Zhang Han nodded his head, then followed Zhao Feng and walked towards the dense forest on the back mountain. After passing through a dense forest, they arrived at a cliff that was about 40 or 50 meters high. "Master, I'll jump down first." Zhao Feng was really delighted since he had a bright future, so he wanted to show off his moves now. However, Zhao Feng forgot that he was carrying 200 jin of water. Before Zhang Han answered, Zhao Feng had already dashed forward. He ran 3 steps forward, arched his right leg upward, and stretched his arms out to the side while preparing to jump. However, right after his arm extended out, the force from the 2 barrels of water made Zhao Feng lose his balance. "Ah?" Zhao Feng was shocked when he realized that the buckets were weighing him down. Splash! Zhao Feng swung his hands and feet round wildly in the air while trying to regain his balance, but he ended up landing on his back. Fortunately, Zhao Feng's skin was tough, so the fall did not cause any injuries. "Hey, elder brother, you fell down. Did you get hurt?" Meng Meng asked in a caring tone while staring with her big eyes, like a warm baby. "No." Zhao Feng blushed all of a sudden. He hastily stood up and answered with a laugh. "Papa, it's so high, how are we going to get down?" As she noticed Zhang Han walking forward slowly, Meng Meng started to hide her face. "Meng Meng, just close your eyes," Zhang Han said with a chuckle. "Well. Okay." Meng Meng did as she was told and closed her eyes. The next moment, the little fellow didn't feel anything but heard Zhang Han say, "Okay, open your eyes." When Meng Meng opened her eyes, she was amazed to find that they were already down. Therefore, the little princess said in surprise, "Ah, we've come down, it's so weird." Realizing that Dai and Little Hai had not come down, Meng Meng urged them, "Hi, come down quickly. Ooh, ooh, ooh." After calling out a few times, Dai stepped forward to jump down and landed safely with a backflip. Even the barrels held in his arms and hand did not shake at all. Little Hai was faster. He streaked forward and stepped steadily on the ground. "Huh?" Meng Meng was stunned at this moment. She looked at Zhao Feng strangely and said slowly after thinking for a while, "Big Hai Hai and Little Hai Hai did not fall down." Although there was no ridicule in those words, Zhao Feng felt ashamed while facing such an innocent statement. He was completely embarrassed. He still couldn't compare with the 2 high powers. "Ahem, which way should we go?" "Right, over this way, we'll arrive in a few minutes." Zhao Feng pointed in the direction of the sea while at a loss. Then he hurried to take the lead. At this point, on the beach which was not far away, since it was at the central part of several mountains, this area was sparsely populated. There were 50 tents in the open area behind the sofa. Beside them, there were many pieces of training equipment that had been specially bought by Zhao Feng. Among them were cross-trainers, dumbbells, sandbags, and even several dynamometers. As they approached the beach, they saw many pieces of obstacle training equipment for turning, climbing, and rolling. Perhaps Zhao Feng simply preferred his original training methods. 50 people had gathered in groups on the beach, apart from Ahu, Xuyong, and some others who were crouching at the farthest side of the beach to smoke. The others were chatting on the beach. There was even a dozen or more people playing with 6 women near the shore. "Elder brother Yong, why haven't they come yet? We've been waiting here for hours." Elder Meng said with a futile gesture. "Just wait until they come." Xuanhuan sat down and answered. Hey, Elder brother Yong, I heard you met Elder brother Feng's boss once. Please tell us the details," Ahu asked curiously. "That's right, I've seen him once." After thinking for a moment, Xuanhuan shook his head slightly and said, "On the day when Scorpion was attacked, I was going there to talk to him about something. When I arrived at the first floor, I saw the boss beating Scorpion. You won't be able to understand his true strength until you've seen him in action. He's truly formidable." "How formidable is he?" Ahu scratched his head and said, "We all watched the surveillance video back then. He might be awesome, but he didn't seem to have any incredible skills." "Don't just focus on his skills, after all, the surveillance video is a little blurry." Recalling what had happened at that time, Xuanhuan shivered and said in a trembling tone, "If you had been there in person, you would have a different feeling about it. The boss' presence is overwhelming. When he stands in front of you, it's like a mountain weighing down on you with unimaginable pressure, and..." Xuanhuan took a deep breath and slowly said, "He was too emotionless, especially his indifferent eyes. It seemed that he regarded everyone as an ant. In short, he was so frightening that only one sentence came to mind at that time: the weak should fear the strong." What a terrifying man. What happened after that? When he went upstairs, Elder brother Yong was not in the surveillance pictures. Elder Meng said, doubtfully. Xuanhuan's face was as hard as stone. When he saw what Zhang Han did at that time, he felt a little afraid. Therefore, he ran directly to the monitoring room and never went upstairs. He thought it would be inappropriate if he told the truth though. While Xuanhuan was busy trying to think of a way to answer, Ahu's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked at the figures behind Xuanhuan and said, "Here they are." Chapter 224, Blown Out with One Punch. Swish. Xuanhuan and the others suddenly cast their eyes to the other side, only to see Zhao Feng as their leader slowly appeared from off in the distance. Come on, stop playing, come over here and line up." Xuanhuan stood up and shouted at the people around him. Everyone stopped what they were doing, then quickly walked over and stood together. SHHH. The fierce dog is coming too. Does it bite? Several people saw Little Hai leisurely walking forward with its chest raised. They all remembered that day, along with its devil-like speed and sharp teeth. They were scared and shuddered while nervously saying, "I don't think so." Ahu replied with a swallow. "Is that a gorilla? It looks like it is more than 2 meters tall. How did it get so big?" Xuanhuan only felt a little dizzy as he looked at the massive arms and legs of Dai that seemed to explode with power. "It's too big, it feels like King Kong. But it looks so cool, like Kaiser in that movie, so cool. Really cool. Actually, I want to say that the boss's daughter is still the most beautiful. Look, that little fellow has a delicate face, like the princess of a fairy tale world. Gee, don't forget who our boss is. Can this beautiful little girl be born casually? She must possess strong genes. But it seems the little girl and our boss don't look much alike. While everyone was whispering, Zhao Feng took the lead and moved closer. After casually setting aside the buckets, along with Dai, Zhao Feng took a few steps forward, looked at them with his eyebrows raised, and said, "Is this how you line up? So noisy. Get moving and line up in 2 rows, now." With Zhao Feng's words, everyone quickly lined up in 2 lines. Although they were not as neat as the regular army, they were not as disorganized as before. "Line up properly, come on, all of you, follow my commands, at ease, attention, dress right." At this time, Zhao Feng felt a little like a drill master, quite a style of pointing out the country. But just as his performance began, Zhang Han shook his head slightly and interrupted. "You don't have to do that, just be casual." "Ah?" Zhao Feng's expression was slightly stiff. "Pooh, ha ha." Xuanhuan took the lead in laughing. The crowd gathered together again, forming a circle around Zhang Han. "Brother Feng, you don't have to show off, look at how nice and easygoing our boss is," Hu quipped while laughing. "Are you looking for a fight?" Zhao Feng glared at him. "Papa, why are there so many brothers and sisters?" Meng whispered with her two small arms wrapped around Zhang Han's neck. "They're all going to train here," Zhang Han answered with a chuckle. "What is training? Is it like playing games?" Meng asked curiously while blinking her big eyes. "Training is very hard and tiring. Only after they train well, can they protect Meng, because we are." Zhao Feng looked at Meng. At first, he had a smile while speaking, but his face suddenly changed to a somewhat serious expression. As if making a declaration, he spoke in a slightly solemn tone and said, "Meng's guardians, eh?" Meng was stunned, her big eyes swept the area, then she said in a childish tone, They're my guardians, but what are guardians? They are people who protect Meng. Zhao Feng thought about it and answered, "Then I don't want them." Meng said, then, her arm tightened around Zhang Han's neck and her head leaned against Zhang Han's neck. "I only want Papa to protect me. I don't want anyone else." Ha ha. Zhang Han laughed and lowered his head, then kissed Meng's tender and delicate face. He said softly, "Of course, Daddy will protect you forever. Papa is the best, meow." Meng lifted her little head and gave him a kiss. This scene made dozens of people in the surrounding area chuckle. At first, they were a little restrained in front of Zhang Han, but now they had relaxed a lot because they could tell that their boss was a very good father. His easygoing manner made people feel closer. "Papa, Meng wants to get down and play in the sand with Big Hi and Little Hi." Meng saw the two Hi powers sitting on one side, and began to wriggle in Zhang Han's arms. "Go ahead. You can only play in this area, you can't go to the beach. If your clothes get wet, you will be uncomfortable," Zhang Han reminded. "Okay." Meng replied cleverly. She went down to the ground and played with Dai and Little Hi on the side. After seeing how human-like the two Hi powers were, everyone shook their heads and sighed again. "Boss, what are you going to teach them?" Zhao Feng asked curiously. He was going to learn a simplified version of Big Dark Devil Shadow, which was scary to him because its actions were so difficult, but he preferred to challenge his limits. At the same time, he wanted to see what level of skills Hu and the others were going to learn. If it was also difficult, then he intended to learn both at the same time. As Master's disciple, he thought that he needed to be strong enough. It would be disgraceful if he was surpassed by his men. So, since he wanted to be a leader, Zhao Feng had planned to put in more effort than them. At this time, Hu and others gradually stared after hearing this, hoping to learn some real skills. Zhang Han, on the contrary, shook his head after hearing this and said, "Don't worry about it, each of you, punch the sandbags first. I'll see if your bodies are capable of practicing." "Okay," Zhao Feng nodded, then looked at the crowd and said, "Come on, line up and hit sandbags one by one. This is your first performance in front of the boss. Go all out and try your best." After that, everyone formed a long line, led by Hu, who was the fastest. "Let's get started." Zhao Feng took 2 steps backward to show the position of the sandbag beside him. Once his words fell, Hu took 2 steps forward and looked aggressive, but when he reached the sandbag he stopped again, and then looked at Zhang Han doubtfully. He scratched his head and said, "Boss, should I punch it or kick it? Just use your fist." Zhang Han nodded his head. "Okay." Hu closed his mouth, clenched his teeth, exerted all his strength with his right arm, and hit the sandbag with a fierce punch. It made the whole sandbag shake slightly, flying back until it was at about a 40-degree angle. "Good, not bad." Zhao Feng applauded and said with a little praise, "It's good. This sandbag is 80 kilograms. It's pretty good for him to be able to knock it back that far. Haha, after all, I've been practicing for a while." Ahu scratched his head and laughed while moving out of the way. Ha! Without another word, Xuanyang punched it directly. Xuanyang's skill was a little better than Ahu's, so he hit it back far enough to form a 45-degree arc. Zhao Feng's eyes lighted up as he applauded and praised him while saying, "Great, when I joined the army, that would have been enough to be in the top 3. You're too kind." Xuanyang smiled slightly and glanced at Zhang Han's expression. He realized that there was no expression on his face, so he could not tell whether it was a compliment or something else. With that, he stepped aside. The rest of the group all took turns punching it. As Zhao Feng had expected, Xuanyang, Ahu, and Elder Meng were the strongest. The others were relatively worse, especially the 6 women who had very little strength. But, this also surprised Zhao Feng because most of them were more powerful than ordinary people. After a round, Ahu smiled and said, "Will Brother Feng give it a shot?" "Me?" Zhao Feng narrowed his eyes slightly, then raised his chin and spat out a word faintly, "Okay." After that, Zhao Feng stood in front of the sandbag, clenched his right hand into a fist, and instantly hit the sandbag. Bang! A loud sound rang out as the whole sandbag swung at a 180-degree parallel angle. "Wow! That's awesome. You are worthy of being the same Brother Feng who kicked Guang Xingchen out, so strong." With just one punch he was greeted with praise from everyone, especially the 6 women whose eyes were somewhat brilliant. "Well, boss, would you like to try?" Suddenly Xuanyang laughed and said, "Give it a try. Give it a try." At this time, many people also booed because they wanted to see how great their boss was. However, Zhang Han did not have any expression on his face. He just shook his head slightly. "It's all right, don't make a fuss, our boss is awesome." Zhao Feng waved his hand and said. At that moment, Meng Meng's immature voice came from the side. The little princess said in a child's tone, "Papa, you also try it." Everyone looked over, only to see Meng Meng standing on the side, muttering her delicate mouth and proudly saying, "My papa is the best. Then I'll try it." Zhang Han chuckled and went towards the sandbag. He looked at Meng Meng and said, "Meng Meng, cover your ears." Meng Meng obediently covered her ears with her small hands. At this time, the eyes of Xuanyang and others all focused on Zhang Han. Then they gradually held their breath. They wondered what angle the boss could hit. Maybe it would probably be 360 degrees. But they were wrong. They only felt a flash in front of them. They were not even able to clearly see Zhang Han's action before they heard a crackling noise. Right after they heard the sound, the scene in front of everyone made it so they could not help gasping. They watched as the whole sandbag was beaten to pieces, like a punctured balloon with something like blooming fireworks. A blowout? Xuanyang and others were flabbergasted. Damn it, were they blind? It was blown out in just one punch. How powerful was he? It was beyond their imaginations. People didn't believe their eyes. They expected their boss to hit a round of the sandbag, but they never expected this result. "Ouch, Papa, you broke it." Meng Meng's expression was somewhat adorable as she spoke with her big eyes wide open. Ooh, 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 ooh. At this time, Dai stepped forward and came up with 2 calls from his mouth, expressing that, Dai could also blow up this small sandbag. He shouted and leaned in to show himself. But Zhang Han shook his head with a faint smile and said, "Go and play with Meng Meng for a while." Ooh, ooh, ooh. Dai scratched his head and went back to play with Meng Meng. Finish the round and then let's get down to business. Zhang Han's gaze swept Xuanyang and others while saying. At this time, Zhao Feng leaned in and said with a smile, "Boss, how is it? Are their powers all right?" Hearing these words, the expressions of Ahu and others became serious, and they looked at him eagerly. Zhang Han's strength already convinced them. Not only that, they all could tell that what Zhao Feng said were true. Their boss was more powerful than the invulnerable monster. Following such a fierce boss, they were really happy. At this time, They were more eager to be praised by the boss. But who knew? Zhang Han just shook his head softly and said, "Very bad, they can't practice the skills I taught for the time being." Ah? Zhao Feng's expression was slightly stiff, but then he felt relieved. What was the level of the master's vision? That's awesome. Although the physical quality of Ahu and the others was similar to when he first went to the army, in the eyes of the master, they were still inadequate. After all, he was also an amateur right now. He couldn't even practice the formal version of the big dark devil shadow. Then, what will they practice? Zhao Feng asked doubtfully. Just start with what you prepared first, then we can practice what I taught them when their punches reach 300 kilograms. Zhang Han and Zhao Feng said, then glanced at Ahu and the rest of the crowd, adding, "What I'm going to teach you is Canyon gymnastics and Canyon martial art. I'll only show you once." Hearing the words, Ahu and the other 49 people lifted their spirits and carefully watched. Even Zhao Feng was the same. He was not complacent after getting Big Dark Devil Shadow. Instead, he still looked seriously at the moment. There were 18 movements in Canyon gymnastics. Zhao Feng could see that it was simpler than the simplified version of the Big Dark Devil Shadow. However, despite this, it also aroused people's continuous exclamation. Can this be done? I feel the angle is too difficult. I can't stand it as soon as I exert myself. This action is so exaggerated. How does the boss do it? Gradually, everyone's exclamations attracted Meng Meng, who playing on one side. The little fellow looked over and saw Zhang Han doing strange movements. Meng Meng sprang up and ran to spot a few meters away from Zhang Han's side, then stretched out her small arms and legs while trying to copy him. Plop. As soon as she lifted her leg, Meng Meng fell on her little buttocks. Eh? Meng Meng hesitated for a moment. She pressed her little palm on the sand, stood up, and muttered, I can't stand up. During the conversation, she tried several more times, but each time ended with her staggering and landing on the ground. Fortunately, Zhang Han's movements were completed and he began to teach some simple martial arts. The movements were not many, such as the straight punch, hook, sweep, knee strike, elbow strike, and other basic movements. After that, there was a series of several movements to coordinate the body, and then he told everyone that they should master these movements. Although everybody could see it clearly, Zhao Feng could sense that the angle and distance for these movements were mysterious, just like how 1 produces 2, 2 produces 3, 3 produces all things in the world. If they could master them, then they would be able to do complete even more movements. As for Meng Meng, after Zhang Han started displaying the movements, she leaned on his side. Ha! Meng Meng reached out with her little arm and released a delicate punch. Ha! Meng Meng raised her right foot and kicked with a small arc to the side. Ouch! She flopped down on the sand. Hum! Meng Meng's little mouth tooted. This time, she did not stand up and just sat on the ground, then said with a dissatisfied voice, Papa, I fell down. Why are you ignoring Meng Meng? Chapter 225, Desire to Succeed. Really, how can I ignore you? Zhang Han stopped, then went over to Meng Meng and held her in his arms. He stretched out his finger and tapped the tip of Meng Meng's small nose. He laughed and said, Shall we go back to the mountain and play? Oh, yeah, it's hot here. Meng Meng nodded in a lovely manner. Let's go then, Zhang Han said. When he was passing by Zhao Feng, he thought about it and said, Let me know when the water is used up. As for food, you can take whatever you want from the animals on the hill. Okay, master, Zhao Feng said excitedly. Zhang Han nodded his head lightly and walked towards the other side with Meng Meng in his arms. Ooh. Dai came over and pushed Zhao Feng, causing staggered again, then followed Little Hai. Zhao Feng laughed bitterly. Brother Feng, our boss is so cool. The sandbag was blown to pieces with a single punch. Ahu said excitedly. He is not only awesome but also very handsome. Wow. Boss is really handsome, and his daughter is also very beautiful. It's really enviable, Brother Feng. Boss, boss. A ponytailed girl blushed a little and asked shyly, does the boss have a wife? Tut. Zhao Feng glared at them, then waved his hand and said roughly, forget about it. I'll tell you this, the boss wife is a unique and very beautiful woman. As for who she is, you will find out later. Just kidding, hum. The ponytailed girl gave a gentle hum. Brother Feng, our boss is so powerful, so after we practice, will we be really strong as well? Elder Meng asked. You don't need to think about it, do you? Certainly, you're going to be stronger. Since you chose to follow me, you're bound to be superior. Zhao Feng nodded and answered. Then his expression became serious and his eyes glanced at the crowd as he said, but I'll make it clear first, I don't like to see deserters, so if you want to quit now, just leave. If you choose to stay, then don't complain about the training. With those words, the expressions of all the people became a little more serious and they all said frankly that since they came, they would not quit. Zhao Feng nodded with satisfaction. At this time, Xuanhuan asked curiously, Brother Feng, what did the boss teach us? Canyon gymnastics, is that a powerful martial art? Why did he say that we have to reach 300 kilograms of punch strength to practice it? 300 kilograms is 600 jins. Even a cow would be knocked out with one punch. It seemed that their boss must have reached that level, but how long would it take them to reach that level while practicing? Xuanhuan had some doubts about this. After all, everyone had different constitutions. Hearing that, Zhao Feng thought for a moment, then decided to talk to them about the matter carefully. He became more serious and said, then let me tell you something. Do you know why I was able to defeat Xuan Xingshan in one move? Do you know why the strong man you met could fight with hundreds of people? Do you want to know what level his strength is at, and why he was invulnerable? Yes. Tell us, Brother Feng. Ahu replied quickly. At this time, everyone in the area gathered together and formed a circle, ready to listen carefully to Zhao Feng's explanation. Seeing this, Zhao Feng said directly, it's because there is an invisible world in this world, which it is hard for ordinary people to see. This invisible world is a world of martial artists. It's generally called the martial arts world. Just like you imagined, it's like the martial arts worlds in TV series or the Jianghu. As things are now, I can tell you clearly that such people do exist, and I, under our boss's teaching, have become one of them. People felt a little confused after hearing that, but they were also extremely excited at heart due to the excitement of the unknown, but also because they were about to come into contact with a higher circle. People in the martial arts world are generally called martial artists, that is to say, people who practice martial arts. Of course, martial artists also have ranks. To reach the first stage, which is called obvious strength, requires you to accumulate strength and make a breakthrough. After understanding and mastering the essence of strength, comes the breakthrough to inward strength. Inward strength is the use of internal power, which is more lethal. If obvious strength is regarded as hard power, then inward strength is soft power. As for peak strength, it is the combination and integration of hard and soft. In regards to the foreign strong man you saw last time, his comprehensive strength is at the level of peak strength. Holy shit, the martial arts world really exists. This is awesome, it's just so awesome. For a moment, everyone was shocked, and it took several minutes for them to recover. Which level are you at, Brother Feng? Ahu asked curiously. My current level is obvious strength. Zhao Feng curled his lips and said depressingly, didn't you see that I almost stumbled when the gorilla pushed me? By the way, I'll tell you in advance that those two guys, who just came here, are the two high powers on Mount New Moon. You'd best stay away from them, they are very fond of harshly beating people. Both I and my former drill master were beaten up badly. Yes, yes, yes. Everyone felt a little nervous in their hearts and hurried to say yes. By the way, Brother Feng, which level does our boss belong to? He's so strong, Is it peak strength? Elder Meng asked curiously. You think too highly of peak strength and look down on our boss. Zhao Feng shook his head slightly and raised his chin, showing a prideful look. He looked at the crowd and said very slowly, Boss, who is also my master, is a chi strength master. Ah? Everyone was stunned and asked doubtfully, what is a chi strength master? The next stage after peak strength is chi strength master. I'll tell you this, chi strength masters are so awesome that you can't even imagine it. Even the name is enough to shock other martial artists. When talking about chi strength masters, Zhao Feng became energetic and talked for a long time. This also allowed everyone to understand how powerful Zhang Han was, so they couldn't help gasping. After the surprise, another problem appeared. Xuyong thought for a moment and said, Brother Feng, if it takes 300 kilograms of strength to practice Canyon gymnastics and martial arts, we're not going to be able to succeed in a short amount of time. Besides, is 300 kilograms the same as obvious strength? You're wrong. Zhao Feng shook his head slightly, then smiled confidently and said, if you want to enter the martial arts world through power, it takes 1,000 kilograms of power for you to reach obvious strength. With strength of 2,000 kilograms, you would almost be at the level of inward strength. More than 3,000 kilograms of power is peak strength. Of course, this is only a general concept. There are also some talented people who entered the martial arts world using speed, combat techniques, and so on. In short, the knowledge of the martial arts world is very complicated and you don't need to know it all right now. The only thing you need to know is that as long as you train as I say, in less than half a month, there will be a lot of people who reach the level of obvious strength. Hiss. As soon as this sentence was uttered, the desire to succeed began to burn in the hearts of everyone there. Shall we start now? Ahu said while moving his body. What do we train first? Xuyong asked. Before Zhang Han left, he said that their physical strength was not enough to train, so they had to train with Zhao Feng's training method first. However, they didn't know what method Zhao Feng used. After seeing the curious look in everyone's eyes, Zhao Feng didn't hesitate and told them directly. The method I will teach you is the same method I used to train when I entered the army. After saying that, Zhao Feng's face had a look of pride. Then, he shouted out, in the army, I was in the first team of the Zhang Han Special Forces. Our team was called Wolf Head. Chapter 226, High Intensity. Wolf Head? As soon as they heard what he said, the expectation on their faces changed into doubt. What is Wolf Head? Why haven't I heard of it? Ahu said what everyone else was thinking. Zhao Feng's lips trembled slightly and he became slightly amused at himself. He was the weakest one on Mount New Moon since he started following his master, so he was eager to see others being surprised at him. After thinking for a while, Zhao Feng shook his head with a smile and said, forget it, I won't tell you the details. What you should know is that the Wolfhead team of Zhang Han Special Forces is a really powerful force that fulfills dangerous tasks. My instructor, as a martial artist, is a more formidable person than me. Once he finished speaking, everyone finally understood the approximate position of the Wolfhead team. So the training methods I teach you are very formal, but the intensity of training will be 10 times higher than when I first started. Zhao Feng said gravely, putting on a solemn look. What? 10 times? Their hearts lurched. They all knew that the training for the special forces was extremely horrible. If the intensity of their training was 10 times higher than that of the special forces, they would not have a chance to rest for the whole day. Were they strong enough to undertake it? Zhao Feng also knew what they were thinking. He shook his head and said, since you haven't made up your mind yet, I have to say a few more things. Our goal isn't to be as strong as special soldiers, but to become martial artists. So the training intensity will be very high. It's undeniable that you will suffer a lot physically and the whole process will be very hard. Therefore, now, this is the last time I ask you if you want to quit. As he spoke, Zhang Feng's voice became louder. He glanced around at the multitude of people and shouted again. Does anyone want to quit? No. Ahu took on a fearsome face and shouted, we're confident. What, are you the only one who's confident? Zhao Feng asked in a loud voice. We're confident. Everyone present opened their mouths this time. Didn't you eat? Zhao Feng snapped again. We're confident. The voices became louder and louder. Zhao Feng, however, was not satisfied. He yelled at the top of his voice, are you confident? Yes. This time, leaving out Zhao Feng, all 50 of the others cried out hysterically. Great. Zhao Feng stared at the crowd with a kind of glimmer in his eyes, then he clapped his hands hard and said, then we'll start training, now stand in rows. After hearing his order, everyone moved in a hurry to stand in 2 rows, with 25 people in each row. Everyone lie flat on the ground, for the first round, 1,000 push-ups. Get started. Zhao Feng bellowed. At this point, everyone was on fire with zeal. Although it was impossible for them to do 1,000 push-ups, they all bent down and began to do them. As for Zhao Feng, he stood by and shouted out, 1, 2, 1, 2. When he shouted 1, everyone dropped their bodies, and when shouted 2 out 2 seconds later, everyone raised up. Zhao Feng walked between the 2 rows, paying more attention to those 6 women. If they did not perform properly, he would quickly remind them. Zhao Feng knew full well that Zhang Han had only been interested in the 6 women when he was referred to these 50 people. That was because Master wanted to arrange for them to protect his wife. However, most of these people led a life of luxury and privilege, without ever having to truly exercise, so their physical quality was still relatively poor. Most of them could no longer keep up after doing 20 push-ups. But Zuyong, Ahu, and Elder Meng did not have trouble doing 20. There were more than a dozen people, who were not as good as them, that made up the second group. The rest of them kept breathing really heavily and persisted on by virtue of their willpower. Go on, don't stop. If you want to stand out, you have to bear with the pain. I'll see who is the first to give up. After 30 push-ups, Zhao Feng encouraged them again, which helped plenty of people, who wanted to give up, to continue pressing on steadfastly. As for the 6 women, they were obviously weaker after all, so they gradually slowed down. Although they did 1 while the men did 2 or 3, Zhao Feng did not say anything like asking them to keep up with the others. With the exception of Zuyong, Ahu, and Elder Meng, the rest failed to hold on shortly after they finished doing 70 push-ups. That number is nowhere near enough. Zhao Feng's voice cooled down, and then he said loudly, do you have the nerve to stop when the 6 girls are still going? I'll see who gives up before these girls. Of course, the 6 women rested for a few seconds before they did 1. Once they reached 150 consecutive push-ups, many of them eventually could not hold on. Zhao Feng didn't wait for them to stop and shouted out. Remain where you are and take a 2-minute break, then continue. Ouch, my arms are about to fall off. What a pain, my God. Everyone sat on the ground while howling. Almost everyone was covered with sweat. I'm a little shaky after finishing 150 push-ups since I haven't exercised for a long time, Zuyong said while relaxing his arms. Whoosh. Ahu wiped his sweat and said, I guess I can do another 50, but I might not be able to get up tomorrow since today's training intensity is too high. I don't think so. Elder Meng shook his head. He knew that Elder Brother Feng was not a person without a sense of propriety. Since he dared to train us in this way, he should know when to stop. 2 minutes passed. Get up and keep going. Zhao Feng said ruthlessly. Afterwards, they were all forced to finish 1,000 push-ups within 6 rounds. After accomplishing the goal, all the men, including Zuyong, Ahu and Elder Meng, were exhausted, while the 6 girls almost fainted. Come on, drink a bottle of water per person. At this moment, Zhao Feng personally distributed the yanking water to everyone, which was kept in standard mineral water bottles. Gurgle, gurgle. At this point, The area was full of the sound of them drinking water. This water. After he finished drinking, Ahu gradually widened his eyes. As the water moved past his throat into his stomach, he felt a cool sensation spreading out, hydrating his whole body and even relieving the pain and numbness instantly. Everyone was somewhat surprised. Elder brother Feng, what kind of water is this? Xuanhuan asked curiously. This water should be the best in the world. It's the foundation of your high-intensity training and is specially made by the boss for the purpose of training martial artists. So, you can set your mind at rest. However high the intensity is, you can bear it. Zhao Feng explained, then grinned wickedly and said. So, stay in position and take a 5-minute break, then we'll do the second round of 1000 push-ups. Ah, my gosh, you are so cruel, elder brother Feng. At this point, everyone was screaming and shouting. After resting for a few minutes, however, they realized that their bodies were full of strength again. Everyone persisted in doing 200 push-ups at the beginning of the second round. It was obvious that they had improved by leaps and bounds. Start a fire and set up a spit, then I'll give you some delicious dishes for dinner. When they finished the second round, Zhao Feng smiled and asked them to make a fire. Then he went to Mount New Moon to take some ducks and geese. The fragrant aroma of roast ducks and roast geese was well appreciated by everyone in the evening. After the dinner was over, they felt refreshed. Generally speaking, people would be lazy after dinner, but Zhao Feng had become their nightmare. Take a 10-minute break and start the third round of 1000 push-ups. Zhao Feng glanced at his watch and said mercilessly, "Poof." Moving away from the training which was in full swing here. At 5 o'clock, Zhang Han took Meng Meng to the restaurant. He cooked cola chicken wings, braised chicken, and cucumber with garlic sauce for dinner. While they were eating, Zhang Han's mobile phone rang. He took it out to have a look and discovered that the person calling was Pearson, who had been absent for a long time. "Boss, I have to ask you for advice," Pearson said without hesitation. "There are 6 grown Hungarian sheep pigs and about 30 piglets. There is a 20% discount on the price of the piglets. Boss, do you want to buy some of them?" "Buy them all," Zhang Han answered casually. "Buy them all, the money you gave me isn't enough, and I don't have that much money either," whispered Pearson. "It would require over 3 million yuan to buy these 36 pigs, and it cost more than 10,000 yuan per piglet." He did not have so much money. "Send me your bank account number," Zhang Han answered and hung up the phone. A few seconds later, right after Pearson sent him the message, Zhang Han transferred 4 million directly. Apparently, the sheep pigs would be sent to him in a few days. After dinner, the customers left the restaurant in succession. Zhang Han had planned to clean up himself, but Zhao Du volunteered to help him after realizing that Zhao Feng was not there. There was no doubt that this guy was very enthusiastic about the restaurant. After dinner, only Zhang Han and Meng Meng were left in the restaurant. Zhang Han sat on the sofa, holding Meng Meng in his arms and watching TV with her. With Meng Meng in his arms, Zhang Han felt warmth in his heart. Even the boring cartoons became very interesting. All of these feelings were brought by the lovely little princess, Meng Meng. Papa, Xuan and Xuan, which one is cuter? At about 9:30. The cartoon ended. Meng Meng looked up in Zhang Han's arms and said, "Meng Meng is the loveliest, nobody is cuter than Meng Meng." Zhang Han answered with a smile. He picked up Meng Meng and turned her around, then kissed the little princess on her tender face. Is Meng Meng so cute? Of course. Mew, mew, mew. Meng Meng's face approached Zhang Han. Then she kissed him on his cheeks several times. Ha, ha, ha. Zhang Han smiled with happiness, then picked Meng Meng up and said, "Shall we go upstairs to paint?" Let's go," Meng Meng said in a childish tone, waving her small hands around. "Let's go." Zhang Han turned off the TV and carried Meng Meng to the second floor. Papa, no, no. Meng Meng suddenly froze. Chapter 227, A Drinking Party. What? Zhang Han asked doubtfully. What about Mama? Meng Meng is the cutest, so isn't Mama cute? Your Mama isn't very cute, Zhang Han said casually. It's easy to imagine if Xian heard his words, she would absolutely say something like, bastard, a wretched and boring man. No, Mama is also very cute. Meng Meng pouted and said seriously. Very well, your Mama is as cute as you, okay? Zhang Han agreed with Meng Meng. Yep. Meng Meng replied, shaking her head, then she pouted again and muttered, Papa, I miss Mama, she hasn't come back for so many days. Your Mama will be back tomorrow, Zhang Han responded, but I miss Mama now. Meng Meng said pitifully. So let's call her now, Zhang Han said with a smile. Great. With that, Meng Meng cheered up. They went back to the bedroom, where Zhang Han took out a set of flimsy blue pajamas from the wardrobe. After helping Meng Meng change, he took off his coat and went to bed in his shorts. The European-style bed was quite large and covered with light pink silk sheets and a quilt. Moreover, the mattress was soft, belonging to a top brand. Meng Meng stepped on the quilt and mumbled while hopping around, Papa, hurry up and call Mama. Fine, fine, I'll call her now. With a chuckle, Zhang Han took his cell phone from the bedside table and dialed Xian's number. On the other side in Shangjing, the program did not truly end until after 6 o'clock. Xian, a male star, and another female star were invited to dinner as a celebration. Since it was Jiadong, the chief operator's son, who invited them, Xian and Zif could not refuse the invitation, so they promised him. Therefore, the group headed for the Liulan Lake restaurant, which was rather good in this area. Located in Lido Park, the restaurant, made of glass, was a tranquil house with a view of the lake. It served Western-style and Korean food, together with refreshments at tea time that mixed well with the surrounding atmosphere. It was a restaurant that allowed for a good view of the changes of the 4 seasons. It was a good place to share relaxing time with family and friends, stay away from the din and bustle of the city, lay the fickleness of the world aside, and slow down the pace of one's soul. Liulan Lake Restaurant was ablaze with lights at night, while the paths in the forest were all decorated with various lights. As a quiet and secluded restaurant in the city, it attracted many of the celebrities from Shangjing. Apart from the sound environment, there was also a famous chef with good cooking skills. When the crowd arrived at the restaurant, Jiadong had already ordered a whole table of specialties, containing sunshine rolls, roasted salmon heads, fried octopus, Korean seafood salad, garlic steaks, roasted ribs, roasted seafood platters, etc. It was truly a feast. They were led by a waiter as they walked to compartment number 3. In the Liulan Lake restaurant, there were a total of 8 lakeside compartments, all of which had large landings with a window for viewing. Customers could see the lakeside scenery clearly. Even at night, there were still plenty of lights positioned around the lake, and the shadowy water gave people a sense of obscurity. Of course, these 8 private rooms were really expensive, with each one costing 1,999 yuan. When they were about to enter compartment number 3, a confident and domineering voice suddenly filled the area. Xiaodong? Everyone turned to look and saw 5 people standing beside them. Apparently, they were preparing to head to compartment number 1 or compartment number 2, and they were being led by a homely young man with cropped hair. Elder brother Liu, you're here too. Jiadong was somewhat surprised, but he put a warm and flattering smile on his face. The man opposite was Liu Feng, a new entrant with great influence in Shangjing. He had built a good rapport with some of the rich sons of several great families since he returned to Shangjing. However, he had become more and more arrogant when facing others and continually changed his female companions. Currently, there was an enchanting woman standing beside him, followed by 3 men who were obviously Liu Feng's men. The chubby man among them, who was seriously injured, with gauze on both his left cheek and a rugged right cheek, was Dong Hu. One of my younger brothers has just been discharged from the hospital, so I brought him over for dinner." Liu Feng reached out his hand and clapped Donghu on the arm. Donghu twisted his mouth because he had not completely recovered yet, so his arms were very tender. Every time his arms ached, Donghu would always curse Zhang Han in his mind, which only goes to show what kind of snobbish villain he truly was. "What are you doing here?" Liu Feng glanced around at the crowd behind Jia Dong. The instant he caught sight the female star who had appeared on the same stage with Xian, his eyes brightened. However, when he saw Xian, who was standing at the back of the group, his eyes were filled with avarice and amazement. "They just finished recording a program at the TV station, so I came here to entertain them," Jia Dong said with a smile. "Why don't you join us, elder brother Liu? Who's that beautiful lady?" Liu Feng did not answer him but asked a question instead, while staring at Xian unblinkingly. At this point, a glint of embarrassment passed across Jia Dong's face. He had planned to entertain his guests, but one of them was being eyed by a lady killer. He, however, could do nothing about it since he could not afford to displease Liu Feng in the end. So, he honestly replied, "She's Xian. Xian, come over here and let me introduce him. He's child Liu of the Liu family, who has a high social standing in Shangjing." While speaking, Jia Dong reminded Xian because he thought she should be aware of the importance of contacts as a star, and he firmly believed that Xian would know to greet Liu Feng with a smile. After that, she could have a smooth development if she played up to Liu Feng. But, this was only how it went in Jia Dong's imagination. In reality, Xian did not even move. She just nodded slightly and greeted him calmly. "Hello, child Liu." Jia Dong and the others froze as soon as they saw her nonchalant manner. At the same time, a glint of dissatisfaction flashed across Liu Feng's eyes. To avoid embarrassment, Jia Dong quickly said, "Why don't you join us, elder brother Liu? The drinking party will definitely be much livelier with so many people." "Me? Let's talk about it later. I have to take them over to greet elder brother Lin, but I'll ask him if he wants to come." Liu Feng took his eyes off from Xian with a lot of reluctance, then replied while looking at Jia Dong, "Is elder brother Lin here, too?" Jia Dong was shocked, then he smiled and hastily said, "Is he in compartment number 1? I'll come greet him later." "Okay." Liu Feng nodded, took a look at Xian that was filled with emotions, and then turned to leave. "Let's go first." Jia Dong took the lead and entered the compartment number 3. After everyone was seated, he glanced at Xian with calmness and said in a slightly earnest tone, "Xian, it has been 5 years since you retired, and the entertainment circle has witnessed great changes. In this era, contacts are becoming more and more important. You're so beautiful, so it will be easy for you to make a comeback if you have a wide range of contacts." "Ah, I see," Xian answered, nodding her head slightly. "Well." Jia Dong on a smile on his face and said, "Although Liu Feng has a strong background, there are still a lot of people who are more powerful than him in Shangjing. For instance, the elder brother Lin he mentioned just now, whose name is Lin Ji, is acknowledged as one of the 4 scions in Shangjing and is very strong. Since he is also eating here, I'll take you to propose a toast later." Immediately after he finished speaking, a glint of envy passed across the faces of the others, including the hosts. "Xian, you should thank child Jia," Unqing said with a smile. "This is an opportunity to get acquainted with a great man. If you are liked by child Lin, you will develop smoothly in the future." "That's right." The B-list female star, who had been on the same stage with Xian, sighed softly and said with a trace of jealousy, "Elder sister Xian is so beautiful that she's the focus wherever she goes. Even child Jia voluntarily plans to introduce you to child Lin while ignoring us. Xialing, don't make fun of me, I can bring you along, but elder brother Lin doesn't like your plump figure." "Ha, ha, if you had the same charming figure as Xian, I would have already taken you to meet him," Jia Dong answered with a smile. "Ho, ho, ho, elder brother Jia is really a veteran." Xialing rolled her eyes at him. The others also chatted with each other, all while mentioning how high Linji's social status was. Xian, however, had no interest in such things, so what if he was one of the four scions? Zhang Han had been one of the four scions in the beginning. While other people were talking, the faint sound of Xian's reply was heard. I'm sorry Child Jia, but it's not necessary to bring me to propose a toast. Huh? Everyone present looked in her direction. A smile froze on Jia Dong's face. Xian, what do you mean? Asked Jia Dong. Elder brother Jia. At this moment, Zif quickly said, elder sister Yan seldomly attends drinking parties and isn't in the habit of toasting others. Although Child Lin is powerful, we're complete strangers to him after all. It's enough for us to know you. In my opinion, drinking with elder brother Jia is much better than drinking with the others. Oh. Jia Dong sized up Xian and shook his head slightly. He did not say anything, even though he did not agree with her, and just replied flatly, just make yourself comfortable. Waiter, a box of Mazaro. Jia Dong waved to the waiter standing at the door. Okay. After hearing what he said, the waiter quickly ordered some drinks with the ordering machine. There were 4 bottles of Mazaro in a box. Mazaro was a brand of Mogao red wine, with 4 bottles costing 120,000 yuan. That is to say, it cost 30,000 yuan per bottle. Using it to entertain people was seen as a very sincere gesture. After ordering the drinks, everyone chatted for a while. Then the waiter brought out dishes and put them on the glass tray of the round table. Those 4 bottles of red wine were not opened until all the dishes were served. The waiter opened a bottle of red wine, poured it into the decanter, and filled their cups a moment later. Let's have a drink first to celebrate. Before he finished speaking, Jia Dong looked in the direction of the door out of the corner of his eyes. As soon as he saw a few people coming in, he stopped and his eyes widened. He stood up in a hurry, with a wide smile on his face, and stepped forward. Oh, elder brother Lin is here. I was just thinking of going to propose a toast to you later. I didn't expect you to come here. Ha, ha, come on in, please sit here. Chapter 228, Zhang Han? Lin Ji nodded gently and followed Jia Dong to his seat. After getting the signal from Jia Dong, the television hosts gave up their seats to the 5 people who just entered. During this period, everyone greeted him with great respect. Child Lin. Xian, however, just sized up Lin Ji for a while with her beautiful eyes and pursed her lips. She did not even greet him in the end. Lin Ji was a very fair and somewhat feminine man with thin eyelids and small eyes, who looked like a gigolo, which gave off a very scheming impression to Xian from the beginning. But the instant Lin Ji spoke, his hoarse and rough voice greatly dispelled his effeminate temperament. His gaze swept over the red wine on the table, then he waved to the waiter and said, 4 bottles of 1982 Lafite and put them on my tab. Okay. The waiter breathed hard all of a sudden, then nodded with excitement and hurried to place the order. The 1982 Lafite cost 170,000 yuan per bottle, which was 680,000 yuan for 4 bottles. This increased her commission by a large amount. Experts were indeed generous when they placed an order. Everyone's eyes lit up when they realized how generous Lin Ji was. They sighed inwardly. He is certainly a scion with great influence in Shangjing. 4 bottles of Lafite quickly arrived. Upon seeing the red wine, Jia Dong took his goblet and said, come, let's drink the wine in these goblets first and propose a toast to elder brother Lin together to thank him for his enthusiasm. This time, in addition to the 5 people who came after them, everyone, even Xian, raised their goblets and drank some of the red wine. During this period, the hosts, Xiling, and the male stars who had appeared on the same stage with Xian all flattered him. Thank you for your hospitality, Child Lin. Thanks, elder brother Lin. Elder brother Lin is so generous. In the face of praise, Lin Ji stayed calm, for he was accustomed to such occasions. Suddenly, he looked at Xian who had remained quiet this whole time with amazement in his eyes. then raised his glass that was filled with Lafite, took a sip, and said with a smile, "Xian is really much prettier than she was 5 years ago." Hearing what he said, everyone present looked at Xian. They realized that Lin Ji came here for Xian, otherwise he would not have come in person. "Thank you." Xian pursed her lips and gently nodded her head. "Miss is as elegant as usual, and I like your personality very much," Lin Ji said with a smile. "Child Lin, I'm not worthy of such praise," Li Yan replied while staring at Lin Ji. "I have never lied." Lin Ji shook his head and said, "I remember that Miss Zhu was in the limelight and had a good chance to win the title of Best Actress 5 years ago, but to my surprise, you retired. In fact, I'm quite curious about the reason, because the average person would not choose to retire under those circumstances." Xian, however, did not want to talk about this topic. After witnessing what happened, Zif quickly said with a smile, "Xian retired because she had some private affairs at home, and she did not intend to come back until recently." "Oh, I see." Lin Ji had a look of enlightenment on his face as he stared at Xian and slowly said, "I believe Mrs.'s comeback will be a great success, so I would like to gild the lily. I have a friend whose name is Wai Zhao. He is preparing a high-quality movie recently and I'm one of the investors. I wonder if Mrs. is interested in it. If so, I'll arrange a drinking party later so all of us can talk about the details." When he stopped speaking, the faces of the hosts and the other 2 stars changed slightly. Wai Zhao was a well-known director. He had already produced 2 films of high quality which grossed more than 500 million yuan even though he had only started his career 3 years ago. Besides, the investment must have been rather large since Child Lin considered it to be a large-scale movie. Once Xian took part in this film, she would have a promising future. Everyone looked towards Xian enviously at the thought of this. As for Lin Ji and Liu Feng, their eyes gleamed with amusement. Regardless of the part she would have, as long as Xian promised to take part in the movie, then their object would be complete. In this era, how could it be possible for someone to succeed without paying a price? Now, it all depended on whether Xian was willing to pay the price. However, Jia Dong, who was standing on the right side of Lin Ji, had a wry smile as he sighed inwardly. Child Lin has proven that he came here for her, if she agrees. Everyone gradually quieted down. They stared at Xian, waiting for her answer. Even Xiling could not help saying, "Elder sister Xian, promise him now, this is an opportunity." "Oh." After hearing her words, Xian glanced at Xiling, then looked at Lin Ji, staring at his playful smile. Xian said directly, "Thank you for your kindness, Child Lin. However, I have already booked a plane ticket for tomorrow because I have other matters to attend to." "Really? So?" Lin Ji's eyes became smaller as he narrowed them slightly. When he was about to speak, Xian's phone rang. After taking out her cell phone to have a look, she stood up directly and said, "Sorry, I have to step out and accept this call." After she finished speaking, Xian walked out. In front of the restaurant was a small platform for admiring the scenery, with several tables, chairs, and umbrellas. "Excuse me." After Xian left the room, Lin Ji took his goblet, got up, and followed her. Right after he had just walked out of the door, he heard Xian say, "Zhang Han." "Zhang Han?" Lin Ji froze, then looked at Xian in surprise. As for Xian, she took the phone and walked to the other side. After noticing that Lin Ji came out behind her, she did not say anything else until she ensured that Lin Ji was not still following her. "I just finished recording the program, and now I'm having dinner with the staff of the TV station." "Well, Meng Meng misses you," responded Zhang Han. "I miss Meng Meng too. I will fly out towards Hong Kong at 3:50 p.m. tomorrow and arrive at 8 that night. I have already prepared a present for Meng Meng. You'll never guess what it is." Xian's tone became active when she talked with Zhang Han. "Is there a present for me?" Zhang Han said casually. "You? Nice try. Since you don't ever give me any presents, you shouldn't expect me to send you one either, bah." Xian snorted softly. Listening to Xian's mellifluous and sweet tone, Zhang Han unconsciously broke into a smile. "Oh, Papa, why haven't you finished yet? It's my turn, it's my turn, I want to talk to Mama." As Meng Meng's eagerness leaked out of the mobile phone, Xian's beautiful eyes arched like charming crescent moons. Then Meng Meng's tender voice was clearly heard as she said, "Mama, Mama, I miss you, why haven't you come back? I miss you too." Xian chatted with Meng Meng while standing on the right side. As for Lin Ji, he stood on the left side, occasionally sipping his red wine as he stared at Xian with a playful gaze. He had been eager to get his hands on Xian 6 years ago, but he had failed to find the time due to many trivial things regarding his family. He, therefore, was filled with regret for a long time. Since he finally met her again and had free time, he did not want to let her go easily. But judging from the tone when she called Zhang Han's name, he thought Xian might be quite familiar with Zhang Han. Zhang Han. He had not seen Zhang Han, who had been defeated by him, for years. He had used some tricks to ruin Zhang Han's life and told Zhang Han, "He isn't qualified to be called one of the 4 scions of Shangjing and isn't even worthy of being his enemy." The bullies were always dominated by the wise. The phone call could have lasted for more than half an hour, but Xian thought it would be disrespectful if she chatted for such a long time. Therefore, she tried her best to persuade Meng Meng to hang up the phone. When she turned back towards the compartment, Lin Ji stepped in front of her. "Why did child Lin come out?" asked Xian. "I followed you." Lin Ji chuckled and said in a sincere tone, "I hope you can reconsider the matter I mentioned just now. I think your appearance matches a role in that script. If you feel it isn't proper to talk about it at night, we can talk it over tomorrow, during the day." His words were quite sincere, as if he really wanted to cooperate with her. Xian, however, he'd been in the entertainment circle for several years, so she certainly knew the rules and regulations. If he really wanted to cooperate with her, the news would have been sent to the Royal Entertainment Company, and he would not talk about it in this way the instant he saw her. Xian firmly believed that there was no such thing as a free lunch, so she shook her head slightly and said, "Thank you, but my itinerary has been packed full and my time is limited, so I can't make a decision and promise you without permission. If child Lin wants to cooperate with me, you can contact the staff of the Royal Entertainment Company, I'm sure they will make arrangements." "Well, all right." Lin Ji smiled helplessly. Xian gently nodded her head and stepped towards the compartment. "By the way, Miss Li," Lin Ji suddenly said, "I just came out to make a phone call, but unfortunately, my cell phone ran out of power, so, can Miss Zi lend your cell phone to me?" Xian stopped and looked at Lin Ji with her beautiful eyes. After thinking for a while, she finally nodded and agreed, "Okay." After she finished speaking, Xian took out her mobile phone, clicked on the page for dialing, and handed it over. Upon receiving the phone from her, Lin Ji secretly memorized Zhang Han's phone number, then dialed a number casually. Ling. All of a sudden, a ringtone came from Lin Ji's pocket. "Well, here is my phone number, Miss Z. I'm very glad to meet you. If you have any trouble in the future, you can call me." Lin Ji clicked on the screen of Xian's phone to save his name and handed it back. "Your method is very special," Xian said coldly, then took the phone and turned to leave. Perhaps this method might attract a single woman's attention, but Lin Ji did not know that Xian is already a mother and that the child's father was gradually being accepted by her. Such behavior disgusted her to some extent. Xian returned to the compartment. Lin Ji did not follow, but casually walked to the front side and sat on a chair with his legs placed on the table. He took out his mobile phone and dialed Zhang Han's number, which he had memorized just now, while looking at the surface of the lake in the distance and revealing a playful smile. "Hello. Is this Zhang Han? Do you know who I am?" Lin Ji said with a chuckle. "No." Listening to the bland reply from Zhang Han, Lin Ji no longer wanted to keep him guessing, so he said directly, "This is Lin Ji." Chapter 229, Zhang is angry. Oh. Zhang Han gave a bland response. I just got your number from Zhang. Since you're an old friend, I called to greet you, Linji said hypocritically. After he finished speaking, Linji stopped. About 10 seconds later, the jeer in his eyes increased because Zhang Han was still being silent, so he said, "What's up? Don't you want to chat with your old friend?" "Old friend? You aren't qualified to be my friend." Zhang Han's insipid words came out. "Oh, it seems like you've matured in the past few years. Anyhow, I have slept with your beloved several times. Maybe you know the meaning of the word liaison," Linji said with a smile. "I think you really know how to appreciate beauty, and Qiaoluoluo was really charming. Oh, by the way, I have to tell you that 1 month before I sent you that photo, I had already slept with Qiaoluoluo at the Rongxing Hotel. That was why she felt embarrassed when she saw me later. Unfortunately, I was a little drunk that night and forgot to take a picture for you, which drove me to have sex with her the second time." "What are you trying to say?" To realizing that Zhang Han said still replying very flatly, Linji drew back his playful comments in doubt. According to his character, he should already be irascible at this time. Did the last few years of hard living crush his arrogance? "What I want to tell you is that Qiaoluoluo doesn't deserve your love. She just sighs when she remembers you. In fact, you should thank me for that. I helped you verify whether she was loyal to you, and obviously, she approached you for the sake of her impractical ideas. Now I find out that you are acquainted with Zhang, and you two seem to be friends since you have her personal number. However," Linji snorted and said, "Anyway, since I met her, I'm going to get her." "Ah, go ahead and try," Zhang Han replied blandly because he was very confident in Zhang. When Linji heard Zhang Han's bland words again, his eyes filled with suspicion. He failed to figure out what kind of personality Zhang Han has now. Although he had used words to provoke him repeatedly just now, Zhang Han still remained insipid. It seemed like everything he had done was futile. "I definitely will try." After a pause, Linji said with an insidious smile, "Zhang seems very cool, therefore, if I pursue her, I'm likely to fail. However, I think you know my temperament very well, and I won't feel comfortable until I achieve my goal." "Ha, ha. I just want to ask you if you have anything to do with Zhang. If so, I don't mind sending you a series of photos in a few days." "Is that so?" Zhang Han's tone changed for the first time, which made Linji feel a little cold. "I could already break your bones 5 years ago, so you and the Lins who support you are nothing but ants to me. Don't try to provoke me again, or I don't mind erasing you from this world." After he finished saying that, Zhang Han directly hung up the phone. Listening to the beeping voice from his mobile phone, Linji was a little startled. The whole Lin family was nothing but an ant to him? This might be the most ridiculous joke I've ever heard. Linji smiled contemptuously and murmured, "So you and Zhang are in a special relationship. Things are getting more and more interesting." Linji murmured to himself, then got up and walked back to the compartment. "Elder brother Lin, why did you go out for so long? The atmosphere isn't lively without you," Jia Dong said with a smile. "I made a phone call." Linji nodded with a smile and sat back in his seat. He poured some red wine into his glass and raised it, then said, "Let's drink." After they had a few drinks, the atmosphere gradually became lively. Although everyone chatted with each other, they still engaged in conversations that centered on flattering Linji. Linji seemed to be in a good mood, so he chatted with the crowd for a while. Realizing it was the right time, Linji looked at Zhang again. He took a sip of wine and said, "Miss Z, do you know Zhang Han?" When they noticed that Linji was talking to Zhang, everyone gradually quieted down. When they heard the topic was Zhang Han, Liu Feng's face was covered with disdain, while Donghu, who sat beside him, twisted his face, showing a somewhat resentful look. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang gently nodded her head and said, "Yes. Are you familiar with him?" Linji asked again. "Somewhat." Zhang gave a bland response. "What is his current relationship with you?" Sorry, this is my business. Xian raised her eyebrows and was a little impatient on the inside. Ha, ha. Lin Ji smiled and said, Zhang Han, as one of my colleagues, was very familiar with us. I remember he beat up someone with high status for Miss Z a few years ago, so I thought Miss Z probably knew him. However, I didn't expect that it was true. At this point, Zif, who was sitting beside Xian, curled her lips. Zhang Han was her brother-in-law, Meng's father, and was more likely to be elder sister Yan's husband in the future. Wasn't she familiar with him? However, she only kept these words in her head and did not speak out on this occasion. So, it's a story about a hero who saved a beauty, Jia Dong said with a smile. Ho, ho, does that cur deserve to be called a hero? All of a sudden, as a sneer sounded out, everyone looked over and heard Liu Feng snort before saying, he was once tricked by elder brother Lin like a dog and then stayed in Shangjing for 5 years after he was expelled from his family. He isn't a hero but a beggar. Jia Dong, shouldn't you drink a glass of wine as punishment? All right, I was wrong, I'll punish myself. Jia Dong nodded hastily and gulped down the red wine in his glass. As for Lin Ji, he was staring at Xian the whole time, only to find that Xian's face fell and she breathed hard when Liu Feng talked about Zhang Han. Furthermore, Zif, who was sitting beside her, put on a dirty look at that moment, which convinced Lin Ji that they had ties with Zhang Han. It's an honor for him to be called a beggar. At this moment, Dong Hu, the fat and bulky man who was sitting beside Liu Feng, said, he lived a dog's life in those 5 years. I once intended to hire him to help me repair cars, but he refused haughtily. What happened afterwards? He raced with elder brother Liu and narrowly won. However, this silly guy promised to race again a month later, but, in the end, he sold the car and fled by plane. He's absolutely a fool. Bang! The sound of something striking the table was heard all of a sudden. People looked away from Dong Hu and turned to face Xian, who suddenly stood up with a sour face at this moment and coldly said, I'm not feeling well, excuse me. Then she turned around and strode away. As for Zif, she picked up her purse with a dirty look and glanced around at the people present. Then she gave Dong Hu and Liu Feng a look of disgust and turned to leave. Xian, you. Jia Dong stood up and started to speak, intending to question her. At this time, however, Lin Ji smiled and said, forget it, since she isn't feeling well. She can go first. Let's continue. Fine. Jia Dong smiled apologetically and quickly sat back in his chair. Other people looked at each other in puzzlement because they did not understand what Xian was doing. Lin Ji took a gulp of red wine with a smile. Seeing his expression, Liu Feng knew that child Lin was interested in something. In fact, during the drinking party tonight, Xian was the only one who aroused his interest. Xia Dong, come out with me. Lin Ji suddenly patted Jia Dong on the shoulder. Okay. Jia Dong followed Lin Ji out and sat down on a chair in the observation deck with him. Miss is so attractive, I think she should take part in another program while she's here. What do you think? Lin Ji spoke to Jia Dong with a smile. When he decided on something, Lin Ji was a man of his words, and he would spare no efforts as long as he wanted to do it. On the other side, Xian strode out of the restaurant with a poker face. She did not understand why, but when she heard them insulting Zhang Han she felt angry on the inside. That anger eventually got to her and caused her to make a scene before turning around to leave. Up till now, she was still very angry. Zhang Han occupied a more and more important position unconsciously. She felt at ease when hearing his voice, and she would feel warm while listening to his caring words. In truth, she had a vague feeling that she was probably falling in love with him, and the reason why she was angry was because she cared about him. As for Zif, she was so infuriated that her lungs were about to explode. If they had not left there when they did, Zif would not have continued to just stare at them and would have directly swore. A few bastards, what the hell are they? Why did they speak ill of someone behind his back? A pile of smelly shit. Why don't they say that to brother-in-law's face? Brother-in-law should strike them down. Zif said through gritted teeth. They're of poor quality. Xian said coldly. Exactly, those people absolutely aren't good men, especially the fat idiot who was disfigured and the guy surnamed Liu. They're like opposite sides of the same coin. Zif complained about those men all the way back and did not stop grumbling until she realized they had reached the parking lot and got into the car which had brought them here. She faced the driver and said, "Please drive us back to the hotel." "Okay." The driver nodded, started the engine, and drove back to the hotel. Xian sat in the back seat. She took out her mobile phone to check the time and found out that it was already 11:30 p.m. She had planned to call Zhang Han, but she decided not to after thinking about it for a while because she was going back tomorrow. However, when she saw Lin Ji's number, which was at the top, Xian directly added it to her list of blocked calls. She also had a terrible temper after all. It was early in the morning at this point, but the training on the beach near Mount New Moon was in full swing. Xuyong and the others had already done 10 sets of 1,000 push-ups, and they were doing the first set of 1,000 squats. Zhao Feng did not continue watching them anymore. Instead, he was practicing the movements from the simplified version of the big dark devil shadow at the front. Everyone behind him realized that the movements Zhao Feng was practicing were so difficult that he actually fell down every 5 seconds. The whole process was, fall, rise again, fall again. Upon seeing the effort he was putting in, everyone hardened their resolve. Even if they felt tired, they still gritted their teeth and continued. They, therefore, would drink a bottle of yanking water per person during the break every time after finishing a round of training, and then continued training after a few minutes. The training on the first day did not end until 2 o'clock in the morning. Chapter 230, A Special Gift. You can take a rest now, but you will be getting up at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning for training. Zhao Feng glanced at the clock and said loudly, "What, only 4 hours of sleep?" Many people started howling. They usually slept until noon. But his words did encourage everyone who wanted to chat to go to bed immediately. They needed to take advantage of these 4 hours, or else they would be even more tired if they didn't get enough sleep. However, they had no idea that Zhao Feng slept for merely 3 hours. After getting up at 5 o'clock, he went to Mount New Moon to take an adequate amount of chickens, ducks, and geese back, then processed them and made a fire to roast them. After he finished the roasting, Zhao Feng glanced at the sea level, then looked away to stare at the sky as it gradually brightened. After clenching his fist to make out the growth of his strength, he chuckled and began to practice various difficult movements on the beach. Whoosh! After accomplishing the first movement, he glanced at the stopwatch and smiled. 13 seconds. I've made relatively rapid progress. After a day's training, Zhao Feng went from holding on for 5 seconds to 13 seconds. Although he only lasted 6 more seconds, Zhao Feng could clearly feel a considerable increase in his strength. If he continued this kind of high-intensity training, he would become a martial artist with inward strength by the time Ahu and the others entered the obvious strength stage. "Hey, elder brother Feng, you're up." Ahu woke up because he needed to pee and saw Zhao Feng training alone after he got up in a daze, which shocked him after all. He sighed with emotion at brother Feng's painstaking effort. "Well, time is nearly up. Wake everyone up and we'll start training again after breakfast," Zhao Feng said as he continued to practice his movements. "Okay." Zhao Hu nodded. After coming back from the privy nearby, he walked to the tents one after another to wake everyone up. "It's time to get up, hurry up, brother Feng has prepared breakfast for us." People came out of the tents in succession. Upon seeing that Zhao Feng was already training, lots of people remained silent, but there was a desire to work harder slowly growing inside them. When they saw the food which was almost done cooking, they were moved and admired Zhao Feng even more. About 5 minutes later, everyone packed up and Zhao Feng came over with sweat pouring down his head. After having breakfast with them, Zhao Feng asked everyone to check their strength with the dynamometer. The result satisfied Zhao Feng. With the exception of the 6 women, everyone else had reached the standard required for the special forces. In particular, Xuyong, Ahu, and Elder Meng all broke through the 100 kilograms mark, which showed that their qualifications were not bad. Simultaneously, Zhao Feng found that the strength of these people had increased by more than 30% after yesterday's training. Of course, it was mostly due to the yanking water that improved their physique. Zhao Feng firmly believed that with such high-intensity training, many people would reach the obvious strength stage in no time. Attention, stand in line according to yesterday's position. The first round will be 2,000 push-ups. Start. Zhao Feng, therefore, decided to enhance the training. Zhao Feng learned from Zhang Han that under the nourishment of the yanking water, people would be able to bear the pain of high-intensity training, and that they could even reach the obvious strength stage in only a few days. This situation was because of the insufficient resources. There were no spirit treasures other than the yanking water, so they could not directly be promoted to the obvious strength stage like Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng thought that the process of cultivation was just like a 100-meter race. If they leapt into the obvious strength stage, then their foundations would not be good enough, and, in the end, the effect of the yanking water was limited since it was not as effective for people at higher levels. So Zhao Feng had made preparations. After helping them reach the obvious strength stage in a week, he would require them to start doing other types of training, including rules, etiquette, foreign languages, and other knowledge, as well as professional firearms, investigation, camouflage, and so on. What Zhao Feng needed to do was to assist everyone in surpassing the level of soldiers. Moving away from the intensive training on the beach, in Shangjing, Xian and Zuf put on sunglasses to disguise themselves and left the hotel. Elder sister Yan, shall we have breakfast? Zuf asked. No, I don't have much of an appetite. Let's wait until noon. Unless you're hungry, then I'll accompany you, Xian said in a low voice. I may as well eat with you at noon. I'm not accustomed to eating the food here since I always eat the dishes cooked by brother-in-law. Zif shook her head and gave a wry smile. Xian spruced herself up a fit today. She wore a white t-shirt with a pair of light blue denim cropped jeans that hugged her form tightly and made her long legs stand out more than usual. Moreover, she tied her hair in a simple ponytail, with a light pink cap and a pair of sunglasses. This outfit brought out a feeling of liveliness rather than dullness to Xian. Zif was dressed in a sports suit, which looked simple, and wore her hair down around her shoulders. She did not dress herself up carefully but directly wore a pair of large sunglasses. Even so, the two charming ladies attracted more attention while walking on the street. Judging from the parts of Xian's cheeks which were not covered up, people could tell that she must be a very beautiful woman. Zif caught a cab on the street. After they sat in the back seat, Zif said directly, "Drive to number 234, Dongfen Street." Okay. The driver was a middle-aged man in his 40s. After hearing her words, he directly started the car. He looked at them in his rear-view mirror while waiting for the traffic lights, then said with a smile, "Do you beautiful ladies plan to buy clay sculptures? How did you know?" Zif was somewhat shocked. Ha, ha, I've been a taxi driver in Shangjing for 10 years now, so I know the addresses of a lot of places. The driver laughed, then started the car and made a turn. Oh. Zif nodded her head. Number 234, Dongfen Street. I think it's the headquarters for Shengyi Yuan clay sculpture. The driver said after thinking for a while. Yes, we booked a flight out yesterday and are going to buy some clay sculptures, replied Xian. Her wonderful and melodious voice surprised the driver a little. The present Xian was planning to bring back this time was a clay sculpture. When it came to clay sculptures, clay figurine Zhang was the most influential in the north. It was said that clay figurine Zhang was a very capable man in those years. He could knead the clay into figures in an instant with his hands as long as he talked to the customers face to face, and the sculptures looked so real that they almost seemed to come alive. Clay sculpture making was a Chinese folk traditional art. It was a type of handicraft which shaped various images using clay. Zhan planned to get a colored sculpture based on the image of her, Meng, and Zhang Han overlooking the scenery on Mount New Moon. She believed that Meng would like it. Furthermore, she guessed that Zhang Han would like it too. When she had been on the way to the restaurant yesterday, Zhan had searched for places that made clay sculptures in Shangjing. After finding out that the headquarters for Shengyuan clay sculpture was very popular, she directly made an appointment this morning. At this point, the driver became quiet after he heard what Zhan said. With some hesitation, he finally shook his head and said with a smile, "In reality, the sculptures at the large stores aren't always top quality." "Oh? Do you know a better place that makes clay sculptures?" Zif came to her senses and realized that the driver was insinuating something with that remark, so she asked, "It's not a large place, only a small store. Although the owner is at his 70s, he is a master in clay sculpture making. Many people invited him to be a manager a few years ago, and some others even asked him to make clay sculptures for them 4 times a month, but he refused because he is too old and doesn't want to leave his small store." "Why did he refuse in the face of such good treatment?" Zif asked with curiosity. "Because." At this moment, a glint of bitterness passed across the driver's face as he said, "That small store is something he cherishes because it contains the memory of him and his wife. I heard that the store was run by the two of them. They stood together through the ups and downs over several decades, but his wife died 7 years ago. That store, therefore, not only carries many memories, but also brings him agony. His children have tried to get him to leave, but they have failed every time. He has been there for so long, so he doesn't want to leave." This remark inspired Zhan, so she murmured, "Never wants to leave." She was deeply moved while thinking about it. These 4 simple words revealed a moving love story. She did not envy ideal young couples, but the couples who had lived together till they became old and grey. "Let's go there now," Zhan said in a firm tone while looking out of the window. "Okay," said the driver. Then he increased the speed. Upon reaching Dongfan Street, the driver entered an alleyway, behind which were many alternate paths. Eventually, the car stopped in front of a bungalow with a plaque reading Liu clay sculptures on a street outside the alleyway. "Here we are. You can just walk in. The master's surname is Liu. But you can call him Master Liu," said the driver. "Okay, here's the money and you can keep the change." Zif directly passed over a 50 yuan bill and got out of the taxi with Zhan after she finished speaking. They felt like they were back in the 1990s when they entered the store because all the decoration and furniture were relatively shabby. In the innermost area sat an old man in a rocking chair, quietly drinking tea. He was staring at the wall on the right with slightly squinting eyes, as if he were recalling something. Zhan and Zuf looked over and noticed that there was a series of clay sculptures on the wall. Every sculpture only contained 2 people, 1 man and 1 woman. The figures in the sculptures were young on the far left, and the man looked like the old man. As they moved to the far right, the 2 people in the sculptures gradually grew older and had grey hair. However, they still sat together happily. It was such a heartwarming picture. Zhan and Zuf stood by and waited in silence. Neither of them disturbed the old man since he seemed to be recalling his happy memories. About 10 minutes later, the old man discovered the 2 people who were standing nearby when he drank his tea. He broke into laughter and said in a hoarse voice, "How long have you been waiting?" "We just arrived," Zhan answered with a chuckle. "Ha, ha, ha." The old man stood up, shook his head and said, "Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm getting older and like reminiscing. Come over here and sit down." "It's no problem, Zuf said repeatedly. Following the old man to the right side, Zhan and Zuf sat on the short stools for guests while the old man sat on a taller chair with a variety of tools on the side. "What do you want to make? Can I show you a photo?" Zhan asked in a low voice. "Yes." Zhan took her mobile phone out, found the photo she had prepared, and said, this one, and this one. The 3 of us should be on the mountain. How big do you want it to be? About this big. Xian gestured with her palms and drew a circle which was as big as an 8-inch cake. I'll make a 10-inch clay sculpture. The old man nodded, accepted the phone, put it on the shelf, and then began to sculpt the image as displayed in the photo.